Like core New Yorker now.
Festivities. You didn't get swallowed up.
I did some ice skating, which is nice.
Coach, one leg in the
air. I'm getting ready for my going viral video. Me skating at Rockefeller Center. I'll have a show there a little bit later today.
Love you, Eric.
Get more excited, Coach.
Love it. Love it. All right, let's bring it all back to reality now. The Eagles' offense didn't skip a beat last week without Carson Wentz. All Nick Foles did was step right in and throw 4 touchdowns in a win against the Giants. This is a role Foles has found himself in before. He's now 16-9 in 25 career starts for Philly. Here he is talking about returning to a leadership role.
When you're in a position like I am, where all of a sudden you're backup quarterback and you're out on the field and you're leading the guys, I'm myself. I'm not changing. You just become more vocal and you have more responsibility, and people look to you more because you're the one that's throwing the football. So I'm myself. I'm just in a different role.
Coach, this was we called this a Super Bowl team when Carson Wentz was at helm. There was some doubt, we had little doubt. Now that Nick Foles is in there, how much changes? Are they still a Super Bowl contender?
Well, they're still a Super Bowl contender because they played well defensively and they can run the football. And this is an offense that's built on timing, and Nick Foles has shown that he can operate in that system. Now, it depends on which guy they get. The guy that threw 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in 2013 and went to the Pro Bowl. And then there's been the guy that struggled. My concern is, and we talked about this a lot with Carson Wentz, was how much he got hit. And Carson's more elusive than Nick is. Mm-hmm. So if Nick takes that type of beating and pressure, I think that's going to be a real problem. Now, last year, though, we saw with Derek Carr, we saw with Ryan Tannehill, when you lose a guy this late in the season, it's hard to be what you were.
To the coach's point, in the last 20 years, there's been 11 instances of a guy starting a playoff game after starting 3 or fewer regular season games because he had to replace due to injury, and they're 0-11.
Career regular season games?
No. In that season, where they started 3 or fewer games that season, then went and played in the playoff game. 2 of them happened last year. The last one to actually win was the '97 Vikings when Randall Cunningham took over at the end of the year for an injured Brad Johnson.
Which was also like Nick Foles had been a starter before. So I'd like to see the numbers and see how many of these guys were actually full-time starters when they took over as a backup, because I believe what you do with the offense is totally different.
The Nick Foles question comes down to which was the aberration of his career. Was the 27-2 the aberration, or was the time with Jeff Fisher the aberration? Because the argument for the latter, even though it's not the one that I subscribe to, is, Jeff Fisher had 3 quarterbacks with St. Louis, or Los Angeles, St. Louis, where the Rams. Case Keenum, who was bad there and now is playing the way he's playing. Nick Foles, who was good before he got there and bad there. And Jared Goff, who is now part of that, he's a rookie, but was bad there and is now playing great. And so if Nick Foles is anything like he was with the Eagles the first time around, then I think they can keep it moving. I don't think that's what he'll be able to do. And the defense, which had been a strength the last 3 weeks, all of a sudden is allowing nearly 30 points a game. So they certainly, no matter what, need the defense to get back to where it was the first 3 quarters of the season.
You mentioned Randall Cunningham. Randall Cunningham did have some success in the regular season when he was a starter in Philadelphia. Wasn't able to generate any type of postseason success. The only postseason success that Randall had was once he came to the Vikings in '97 and '98. When we had the magical '98 season, people forget that Brad Johnson started the season. He got hurt early in the season, and Randall took over. People questioned Randall for the first month. Oh, he had a great month. Can he keep it up? He had a great November. Oh, can he keep that up? In December, the conversation was, oh, he's up for MVP. He ended up winning some of the MVP. But people, they weren't satisfied with that because he didn't have success in the postseason. So they said, forget the regular season. Randall will be judged on what the Vikings do in the postseason. Now, we end up coming up short, lost an NFC championship game to Atlanta in overtime. So Nick Foles is kind of in the same as Randall Cunningham. People will keep moving the marker. They will be like, oh, he wasn't successful with Jeff Fisher, so they'll forget the time that he was a Pro Bowl quarterback. I believe that they can run their system, but there's a couple things. The team has to service the quarterback. The defense has to play at the level they played the first 8 weeks of the season. And also, they must run the football and the offensive line, you got to be able to eliminate the times you have free runners in the backfield where Nick Foles can make some erratic or bad plays. That Carson Wentz was amazing.
Right.
When they had free runners or they blitz in third down, he was amazing in these situations. I understand people's doubt because Carson was playing at such a high level in the most stressful of situations. Third down, red zone, when he was being blitzed.
Yeah.
So how do you keep that up? You don't keep that up. But the rest of the team has got to be able to serve as a quarterback, a lot like the Vikings are doing with Case.
Well, what worries me a little bit about his career path is Philly did move on from him and trade him to the Rams, and then he went to Andy Reid in Kansas City, and then Kansas City decided not to pick up his second-year option. Now, that doesn't mean those teams were right, but you do start looking at it and say, okay, what did they see that they didn't feel strongly about? You know, when Carson Wentz's injury first happened, I was thinking, God, this would have been a great spot for Tony Romo. You know, late in the season, 3-game season, and I know that's a little bit ridiculous and a a little bit.
No, it's not. It's not at all. And it's so great that
Nicky.
you said it.
Because
if I said it, Chris would have. He would have. His eyes would have fallen out of his head. They would have rolled so hard.
It is,
but you say it, and so we're good.
It is Nickish, but
It's an adverb.
It should be an adverb. But when you look at the late season and you play these guys that you're hoping give you a chance, and then you've got a guy that is a veteran and had a high level of success, and you think, okay, who do we have a better shot with? So it's a little bit outside the box, a little bit Nickish.
I love it. I listen. I love the idea.
And it could be all the time I've spent ice skating.
Yes.
Couple.
This is Eric
Your brain's
Mangini,
frozen.
ice skating.
The thing we have co-opted from you, the phrase more than any phrase that from any of our guests, is your force multiplier phase. A phrase, pardon me.
Basketball and football.
Right. The idea that are you a player that you need a great situation around you to be successful, or are you a player
like Nick?
Oh,
Sure.
yeah, that is what an outrage. Or are you a player that raises everyone's level, as
Yes.
you described it? And Carson Wentz, because of the situations in which he excelled, appeared this year to be a force multiplier. The fact that they were dominant on third and long, the fact that he was making big plays when he had, as Chris mentioned, a free rusher, that is not just the system.
No.
That is Carson Wentz making some magic with the
Being
system,
special.
helping him. That's the concern for the Eagles is if Carson Wentz, and this is the point I'm going to keep going back to, if Carson Wentz was the league MVP, and you lose the league MVP, and you can still win the Super Bowl, then you should have been winning games by 30 points every week. If you can win the Super Bowl without the league MVP, when you had the league MVP, you should be the overwhelming favorite. You should be, and I understand they only had one loss for a long part of the season. They were the best team in the league record-wise. But I just don't think people looked at Philly as the prohibitive favorite with Carson Wentz.
But when you're the number one seed, you got 2 games to play at home. Do we think Nick Foles can win those games? I do, because it's not like he don't have to play well for 3 months. He's only got to play well for 6 weeks.
And right now, the biggest drop-off just seems to be the lack of mobility and the lack of creativity. So we'll see if what you say, Chris, is that he does have the arm and to do it, and these 2 games are going to be very telling. All right, Coach, stick around. Don't go anywhere. Coming back. Zeke is back. Zeke. But is it too little too late for the Dallas Cowboys? That's next on First Things First.
Practice some double axles.